All right, we'll have more traffic here before too much longer, 13 minutes after the hour. Now, what we're getting now is it appears that one airplane hit each of the two towers. And, that's beyond coincidence, some organizational thing. Many of you have already turned on your television sets. You have the advantage over me because we don't have a TV here in the office, though we should. But the picture that I'm looking at right now of MSNBC is just incredible. Who was that? Oh, okay. Well, we just had Mr. LaRouche. He will be calling back on the other line here quickly. And we will go from that. So, what I think I will do is, he's here now. We'll go ahead and address this. And I want to give out a number several times here because a lot of you, during the course of my discussion with Mr. LaRouche, or at least towards the end of the program, will want some more information. So I'm going to give you a number now, 1-888-347-3258. And if you will call, there will be people on the other end of the line who will be happy to talk to you and clarify some of the discussion that we're having. Also, information regarding videos, pamphlets, anything else regarding what we're going to be discussing will be available by calling that number, 1-888-347-3258. Well, I'm still sitting here looking at this incredible picture, this incredible image in front of me of this burning World Trade Center as these two jets have just slammed. One jet has slammed into each of the two towers. So we'll go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and get my guest on here with me, Mr. LaRouche.
Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Jack.
Well, what a pleasure and an honor to have you back on my program again. I was hoping to move the discussion initially with what we were going to do here into the area of the sublime.
Yes, right.
But now with what has just happened in New York with this, which, you know, it's interesting enough, just yesterday I think it was just yesterday, a bundle of leaflets from your organization in Leesburg that I regularly pass out of my office warning of terrorist attacks in America here very shortly.
Yeah.
And here we have, the morning that you're on my program, what's happening in New York at the World Trade Center. I don't know if you've seen these images or pictures yet on the television.
I haven't yet. I was just sitting up here working and just heard about it before I went and called you.
Yeah, well, the smoke is billowing out of the one tower here. My wife called me a moment ago, and apparently they caught live on film the second jet smashing into one of the other towers.
So obviously this is not exactly an accident.
No, sir, I don't believe it is.
It's not a coincidence. It's obviously, this is so remote a probability that there has to be intention in this thing.
Well, it's one thing for somebody to strap on a jacket made of dynamite and walk into a diner in downtown Jerusalem. It's another thing to jump inside of a Learjet and go smashing in the side of a building like that.
The thing you have to look at in the context in which this is occurring is two things. Now, first of all, the first suspicion that's going to be on this is Osama bin Laden. That name is going to come up prominently, whether as suspicion or just suspicion.
Certainly.
And the second thing, which is not unrelated to the Osama bin Laden question, is this festival, which is planned, really a terrorist festival for Washington, D.C.
At the end of the month.
Yep. We have a global process. The financial system's coming down. That's always a dangerous thing, because when the entire system is being shaken up the way it is now by the financial collapse, political things happen because various people try to intervene and orchestrate events by spectacular interventions, which will change, shall we say, get public attention off one thing and put it on another. So this is obvious. I cannot draw a conclusion except the circumstances tell me something rather evil I don't know which, but they're both connected, because I know the Goldsmith brothers, for example. Jimmy Goldsmith was key in helping to create, he's now deceased, Osama bin Laden and people like that, the Taliban and so forth. And at the same time, his brother, Eddie Goldsmith, who is still very much alive, is sort of the spiritual godfather of this movement, which is planning to inundate Washington, D.C. with some pretty nasty stuff at the end of this month.
Something to a much greater degree than what happened in Seattle.
Oh, absolutely. This thing went from Seattle. Seattle was basically a terrorist operation. But, you know, if you look at the history of how terrorist operations were run, you would run a hardcore terrorist operation, and they would run sympathizer operations, which were not necessarily wittingly connected to the terrorist operation, but they were run coordinated simultaneously. In Seattle, you had the so-called legitimate protest, which was largely trade union-backed. But into the same scenario, you had coming out of Canada, based in Canada, and the Canadian-U.S. border is rather leaky, you know. And they were coming across in droves over there to do funny things. Then you had the key operation, which a conference in Porto Alegre, Brazil, just a short time ago, which Teddy Goldsmith chaired. And this cuts into the people who are generally the ambiance of international terrorism. Then from there, from Genoa, they went to some other things, but the big thing from Porto Alegre to Genoa, where they staged an upscale terrorist operation. Now, from what I know of the details of the terrorist operations being prepared in Maryland and Virginia, or Washington, D.C., where they're being pre-staged, this is intended to be much bigger than Genoa. So what you have is a challenge to the integrity of the nation's capital, of what is ostensibly the most powerful nation, nuclear power on this planet. That is not funny.
If you can, the FBI is now saying that a plane was possibly hijacked for this attack. If you can do that with the World Trade Center, what could you do with the White House?
Absolutely. I've been very concerned about this. You know, I'm not very sympathetic with what some of these agencies do. But I'm concerned not just as a presidential free candidate, but I'm concerned with the security of the United States and the peace of the world. And this is not good for the health of the nation or the world. These things should not happen. And we could prevent this kind of stuff, but we just don't do it because someone says let it happen.
How would you prevent terrorist activity?
Well, the thing is, if you dispense with the myth that there are a number of unknown people out there coming out of the myths and nobody knows where they come from, then you would say, how can you stop the terrorist operations? If you know how the world is actually organized, you know you cannot organize a sustained preparation for terrorist operations in any country without the backing of a powerful government or governments. So that if you know what the operation is, and I would say, you know, I've been warning against this Teddy Goldsmith operation all along because I know what it's connected to politically. It's extremely dangerous. And if I had been president or in a similar position during this period, I would have had an all-out, very discreet, but very all-out and effective discussion with some other governments in the world, and we together would have taken appropriate steps to try to neutralize this kind of danger. Of course, you can't be 100% in this sort of thing, but you can do a pretty good job. And 2 planes, now that's pretty big. That's one plane that might not be preventable, but 2 in the same shot, no, that's not small time stuff.
No, this is pretty serious. Hold on a second here, Mr. LaRouche. I have a traffic update I need to give my listeners. Don, go ahead.
Good morning. That accident at northbound traffic.
Thanks a lot, Don. Lyndon, is there any reason to assume that this would be something other than Osama bin Laden?
Osama bin Laden is a controlled entity. Osama bin Laden is not an independent force. Remember how he came into existence? Osama bin Laden was a wealthy Saudi. In the back in the 1970s, during the Carter administration, or shall we say the Brzezinski administration, the idea of running an Afghanistan war on the borders of Soviet territory was cooked up by Brzezinski as a geopolitical operation. Well, Brzezinski was responsible. They don't necessarily cook it up. But, all right, this thing started, and a Anglo-American unit running together with a certain section of the Pakistani military, the funny boys in the Pakistani military, set up this operation. The United States government and British government others, that is our funny boys, went out and recruited a lot of Islamic people to fight communism and to defend Holy Islam and so forth. That's all right. They recruited in many countries, and they deployed them. Now later, they killed some of the same people they deployed. They're expendable. So they don't really have an insurance policy because when they recruit. But they were deployed in there. Osama bin Laden was one of the big funding agencies, funding conduits, which was used by people, among others, then Vice President George Bush. This is Iran-Contra. It is what's called Iran-Contra, which I called it by other names, which I wouldn't want to put on the air. But, so this thing is left behind, and suddenly now we find Osama bin Laden becomes the name. But Osama bin Laden could not last the way he's running around if he didn't have big protection. And it's not just from a section of the Pakistani government or Afghanistan. It's from other governments who would like to see the effects that Osama bin Laden produces thrown around. So now you can blame Osama bin Laden. At some point you go in and kill him, and you say the problem was solved. But you never considered who created Osama bin Laden, and who protected him, and deployed his forces and name for these purposes. And as we saw in terrorism in Italy in the 1970s, for example, the people who were running the so-called terrorist operations in Italy were not really the groups that had the credit for it. They were actually runaway NATO asset organizations at very high level. Same people that killed the former Prime Minister Aldo Moro in that period. So, in a case like this, don't assume that the popular names that everybody knows or the FBI quotes and so forth, this is the real problem. They may be part of the problem.
Well, our minds, especially in our degenerating Western culture, always runs for the simple answer. We want the kind of answer that will free us from our guilt and our responsibilities of the neglect of our government and our fellow man all these years. And so we run to the simplistic. And the simplistic, of course, is there it is, the big bad boogeyman from the Middle East who has caused us so many problems before. And I certainly understand what you're saying there, that the more simple we can make the presentation, then the less obligated any of us are. Anyway, why would they be doing this? I mean, here we have a market crashing. We don't just have a market crashing. We have an entire economy crashing within the arena of a culture that's crashing. We are, if massive war were to break out in the Middle East any second, nobody would be surprised. If Putin were to be assassinated, if Arafat were to be assassinated, if Sharon were to be assassinated, nobody would be surprised. I mean, we're sitting on the powder keg of powder kegs. And with all of the other provocations that could occur around the world to stop a lot of the economic unity and development that is beginning to gain some momentum between the large powers on the other side of the planet, why in the world fly a jet in the World Trade Center?
And this is to create a provocation inside the United States. I mean, that's the only reason that would be done. You probably, for example, stories may come out that this is done by some Arab group which is protesting the U.S. government's sympathy for Sharon or for the Israeli Defense Force. I don't know if the Israeli Defense Force is going to kill Sharon tomorrow, because there's real conflict there, and these guys tend to shoot, get angry. But it could be some story like that. But what we're into is a period where the word is not terrorism. Terrorism is a part of the picture. The word is destabilization. And the problem part, from my standpoint, is look at our own government. We are, in a sense, still a sort of a superpower. I think the term is not quite appropriate for a present state of affairs, but we used to be a superpower, and we still have a dominant position. What kind of a government do we have? Well, the Bush administration. And here's the thing, system is crashing. You see poor Treasury Secretary O'Neill babbling around. You see Rumsfeld has become a joke in his own Defense Department.
Well, I think the newspaper slug, the one I just most recently read, was that he's going to take on the Pentagon.
Well, this is all a sideshow. The point is, the President George Bush doesn't function. He's been in there, and as I said this January 3rd when I first announced and made a prognosis to what his administration would be, it's been one catastrophe after another. Nothing he's proposed has actually worked. Some of the things he proposed have been done, but they are disasters. And he's not capable of being a president as such, except unless he were controlled by a group of advisors who would give him good advice and solve his problems on how to deal with situations. But he doesn't have that. He has a nut like Wolfowitz over there underneath Rumsfeld normally, who's actually run the Defense Department. You have Armitage in the State Department. There's similar kinds of things. These guys, as I know them, are nuts. And they're not in there. Then you look at the Democratic Party. You have the statement from Daschle, who's the Senate Majority Leader now, saying he can't do anything. It's up to Bush, the president, who Daschle knows can't do anything.
Yeah, well, Daschle is saying, I think he said over the weekend, something like, well, they got control of the House and they got control of the White House, and we have a very slim majority in the Senate, and boy, there's just nothing we can do.
Well, he's wrong, because he knows it. Because I've got a certain position in the Democratic Party, despite what Al Gore would like to think. And I could be in a position very easily to steer these guys into doing things that would begin to work, even with the limited strength the Democratic Party has today. And I think that if the party would do some of those things, we would do two things. We would not only be able to move and shake the population a bit into believing there's somebody up there that might help them. We'd also find a number of Republicans who are not nuts, and who are simply patriotic and will listen to reason, who would cooperate with the Democrats in doing some of the things we have to do.
Yeah, well,
we have a vacuum of leadership.
Well, all of the ills and the evils and the mistakes and the corruption that might have been involved with the Clinton administration, at least when you called the White House, there was somebody there that would answer the phone.
And especially when Bob Rubin was there helping Clinton. I may not approve of what Bob did many times, but at least he was competent.
Yeah, exactly. Now we've got a situation where I'm afraid there'll probably just be a recording inviting you down to the ranch. Now, there was a recent comment here on the television a few moments ago that Bush would be making comments relative to this terrorist attack. This is the biggest thing since probably Oklahoma.
Much bigger.
Well, yeah, I think the implications of this will be much bigger.
Oh, it's much bigger.
I'm just waiting. When Oklahoma first happened, the first 2 or 3 days, and I remember I was glued to the television set, the first 2 or 3 days, there was a large implication towards the Middle East and the Arabs that were running around town. And then they kind of covered that up, and that was out of the picture, and they never mentioned it anymore.
Well, this was largely it was a domestic covered operation.
Yes.
Which we had word of beforehand. Everybody had the word. And if I had been president, on the basis of just what I knew, I would have taken certain actions immediately, which would security surveillance actions, in anticipation of exactly that kind of problem. So we were not mystified. The problem is we have the fun and games is being played by various institutions, and we don't have anybody really effectively in charge.
Yeah. Bush just made a comment, said, well, the plane was an American Airlines Boeing 767 out of Boston. And they don't know whether there were any passengers on it or not. They think that it was a hijacked airplane. But a Boeing 767 from Boston was the plane that did it. And the president has guaranteed everybody he's going to bring the terrorists to justice. And he's talked to the governor of New York, and they're going to bring him to justice. And he said, "God bless the victims." It's a little late for that. But.
Well, as a matter of fact, that is the worst thing he can do. If he was said, "Of course, we are going to go get to the bottom of this and deal with it in an appropriate way," that would be the right thing to say.
Yeah.
But to say that he's going to solve the problem by bringing somebody to justice, that is the worst thing he can say.
Yeah, because again, it goes back to just underscore what you were saying at the very beginning, that if we can find a couple of guys running around New York right now trying to get out of town, or Boston, or wherever the thing took place, trying to hurry up and get on the next ship back to Saudi Arabia or whatever, like that was the end of the problem. But as you were pointing out there at the beginning, it's just part of a network that can only exist by the support and the organizational strength of some major superpower on the planet.
I can make a flat statement on that, Jack.
Please.
If I were president of the United States right now, I would have already acted before this happened, not even knowing that this was going to happen. And I would have had the following cooperation. I would have had cooperation from Russia, from Germany, from France, from Italy. I probably would have gotten a good deal from certain forces in Britain as well. And we would have, and Japan, and China, and Arab countries, including Egypt, and we would have put our heads together real quick, pooled our resources, and said, whether we agree on other issues or not, this kind of thing is not going to happen, and we're going to see to it it doesn't. That would work. The problem is, you've got the foolish president of the United States, and I say that advisedly. Now, a friend of mine just said in Massachusetts, he's running for office up there for a congressional seat, he said, Bush can't even defend his daughters from being bombed.
Well, that took me a second. Bush can't even protect his own daughters from being bombed. Well, out of respect for what's just happened here, still that's hilarious.
I mean, the point, well, you've got to have a sense of humor even in the worst situation. If you don't, your head is not cool, and your judgment will not be clear. I always advise my friends, the worse it gets, the more laughter you better be able to generate. If you haven't got a sense of humor about any situation, no matter how serious. Remember what Roosevelt did? Roosevelt did two things in running for president after the disaster that Coolidge bestowed on Hoover. Roosevelt started his campaign in West Virginia with a famous statement talking about the forgotten man. And then when he entered office, he addressed the American people with the theme, there's nothing as much to be feared as fear itself. And the key thing, we've got a citizenry, a frightened citizenry, a frightened and confused world. We're in a state of denial because they're frightened. They wish to deny that this crisis, they wish to believe that the thing is going to bounce back miraculously tomorrow, that suddenly the Nasdaq will suddenly jump out of its grave and suddenly become prosperous again. The time that now is needed is to reassure, in particular, the American people that somebody is in charge. They know those in charge know what they're doing, and they're going to fix the situation, and they will call upon the American people for support as needed. That would work. But this kind of thing of vengeance-seeking and snarling and growling to prove how mad you are, this isn't government. This is sideshow. This is Bozo the Clown putting on an act.
So we've got a situation here where this could just be the beginning, especially with what we've got coming up with the Jacobin terrorist activity that a lot of people are expecting in Washington at this big summit at the end of the month. Because, I mean, we are so vulnerable now. When you were mentioning all these other countries that could get together and stop this, any one of them are vulnerable. But there seems to be an increasing vulnerability within the United States as we sink deeper into denial and bury our heads in the sand, and then go back to the old tried and true methods of fear-based living that we've always done with before, where our millennial fears and our Armageddonist concerns and all these things start coming back to the surface, and we get our old barking dog outfits out of the closet and get them back on again. incidents like this in the midst of an economic crash, in the midst of a morality crash, could be the beginning of a provocation of some serious setbacks in this country, just from our own Justice Department, just from anything like this could get to a situation where we could find our own liberties in this country in serious attack, just because of the level of incompetence that exists in the government in leadership positions, backed up or at least undergirded to some degree by some very malicious personalities that have been in the Justice Department and in the Defense Department for decades, waiting for the right provocation to occur to move in to their crisis management operations.
And it won't work. The point is, they're idiots. And I really pity the current president. Because he's not a friend of mine. His father certainly was not a friend of mine. But he's president. And I think of him sitting in the office. And I realize the poor man has no conception and no capability of understanding what the world situation is or what's actually hitting him. He's got a Treasury Secretary, O'Neill, who certainly does not inspire confidence in any sane observer. You've got Wolfowitz, who's a nut. You've got Armitage, another nut. You've got problems and then you look at the Democratic Party. You see this crazy Lieberman running around with this faith-based initiative. This is silly stuff. You see Daschle ducking, bobbing and weaving, so he doesn't take a punch. Here we are in a crisis, a financial crisis. Now we've got this terrorist thing, which probably indicates that more things are on the way, but maybe a different variety, but on the way. We have no leadership. You have the American people sitting out there being more and more frightened as this kind of thing occurs. And they look up and they go into the cockpit to see who's flying the plane that's in trouble, and they find a 3-year-old kid sitting in the pilot seat and nobody else there.
Yeah.
That's what our problem is. That's our biggest problem.
Yeah.
We have the means to deal with the worst kind of problem that I can envisage is likely to happen now. But if we don't have the leadership, if we don't reach out to the kind of cooperation we could have, that I know I could have, with key parts of the world, other countries.
Yes. All right, I've got another traffic update to grab real quick. Don, you're on the Stockwell Show.
Hello.
We're getting some other reports here we want to confirm regarding some more terrorist activity occurring at other sites.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't want to mention over the air because I would like to have that confirmed before I say what somebody just called in and said.
Okay, sir.
But gee whiz, this is
what a day.
What a day. What a day. We're sitting out here in the middle of this vast emptiness in the West, and we're removed from the East Coast culturally. We're removed politically. We are removed economically. We've kind of got this. We've got this Marlboro Man attitude out here in the West that hell with New York, and they're all a bunch of queers anyway, and as we go into deeper denial, trying desperately. I have been reporting to my listeners for some time now every step of the breakdown that I've been able to investigate and report and get clear in my own mind of the economic collapse, of the political collapse, and we've seemed to escape it to a large degree. But now we're starting to have significant layoffs occurring in Utah, and it's finally becoming very real around here that we aren't a separate people. We're not this unique group of pioneer progeny that tame the West, and we can tame any other kind of a problem. We are in the same ship. The ship has hit the iceberg. We don't have enough lifeboats. And what we need right now desperately is a captain who knows how to keep the ship alive long enough to keep it on the surface of the water. And as we get more and more of these indications constantly, I like the comment you made there a moment ago about the NASDAQ jumping back out of the grave. The implication, of course, is that it's dead. get my guest on here with me, Mr. LaRouche.
Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Jack.
Well, what a pleasure and an honor to have you back on my program again. I was hoping to move the discussion initially with what we were going to do here into the area of the sublime.
Yes, right.
But now with what has just happened in New York with this, which, you know, it's interesting enough, just yesterday I received, I think it was just yesterday, a bundle of leaflets from your organization in Leesburg that I regularly pass out of my office, warning of terrorist attacks in America here very shortly.
Yeah.
And if you will call, there will be people on the other end of the line who will be happy to talk to you and clarify some of the discussion that we're having. Also, information regarding videos, pamphlets, anything else regarding what we're going to be discussing will be available by calling that number, 1-888-347-3258. Well, I'm still sitting here looking at this incredible picture, this incredible image in front of me of this burning World Trade Center as these two jets have just slammed. One jet has slammed into each of the two towers. So we'll go ahead, and I'm going to... All right, we'll have more traffic here before too much longer, 13 minutes after the hour. Now, what we're getting now is it appears that one airplane hit each of the two towers. And, I mean, that's beyond coincidence, some organizational thing. Many of you have already turned on your television sets. You have the advantage over me because we don't have a TV here in the office, though we should. But the picture that I'm looking at right now of MSNBC is just incredible. Who was that? Oh, okay. Well, we just had Mr. LaRouche. He will be calling back on the other line here quickly. And we will go from there. So, what I think I will do is... nice here now. We'll go ahead and address this. And I want to give out a number several times here. Because a lot of you, during the course of my discussion with Mr. LaRouche, or at least towards the end of the program, will want some more information. So I'm going to give you a number now, 1-888-347-3258. And here we have, the morning that you're on my program, what's happening in New York at the World Trade Center. I don't know if you've seen these images or pictures yet on the television.
I haven't yet. I was just sitting up here working and just heard about it before I went and called you.
Yeah, well, the smoke is billowing out of the one tower here. My wife called me a moment ago, and apparently they caught live on film the second jet smashing into one of the other towers.
So obviously this is not exactly an accident.
No, sir, I don't believe it is.
I mean, it's not a coincidence. It's obviously, this is so remote a probability